Lift up your heart and praise. Lift up your hands and praise. Lift up your voice and praise.
And Moshe said, Hear, O Yisrael, Yahweh your Elohim, Yahweh is one, and you shall love Yahweh your Elohim with all your heart, with all your being, and with all your might. And these words which I am commanding you today shall be in your heart, and you shall impress them upon your children, and shall speak of them when you sit in your house and when you walk by the way, when you lie down and when you rise up, and shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes, and you shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Shabbat Shalom to everyone worshiping with us at home. Glad you're able to join us today. And the name of the message today is called Do Not Do. It's pretty easy. Do not do. I recently gave a message called What Could Be, What Could Have Been. Did any of you remember that? I hope you had an opportunity to reflect on it a little bit and that you've considered it just a little and how it relates to our lives. And in it we talked about and reflected on the person that we might have been and the level of potential that we might have otherwise achieved had it not been for some of the crummy things that happened to us in our childhood and as we grew up, and how we would likely be rid of many of our shortcomings that we presently have and would have been better at everything that we put our hand to. If only we had better discipline and more structure, if our parents had been better role models for us to model ourselves after, and things like that. Because we do learn as children to model ourselves after our parents, and we grandparents too, if you have been blessed enough to have been an integral part in the lives of your grandchildren. And like it or not, on a certain level, our children have done nothing any differently than we. I do want to qualify that there are some times others in our children's lives and in our upbringing who affect their lives one way or another. Some for the good and some not so good. It's human nature. But for the most part, we have learned to be the people that we are with all of our shortcomings and failed potential, but also the abilities and strengths which for the most part has come from the discipline and the structure and the example that was set for us and that we have set for our children. Because you know what? We all have abilities and we all have strengths as well as shortcomings. Amen? All right. The problem is that we notice, or tend to notice, the sufferings from our shortcomings more than we notice the joys of our abilities and strengths. Can you relate to that at all? Sure. Nevertheless, we also talked about how great things might have been for us otherwise. We talked about what it's going to be like in the reign of the heavens when we will have the ability to live unencumbered by the things of this world, a place where we can soar to new levels of our potential and where there's only joyfulness. Right? Remember us talking about that? There's only joyfulness because there's no death and there's no dying and there's no sickness and there's no more tears. So when do you feel more joyful? When you're suffering from a shortcoming, or when you have overcome a shortcoming and you feel confident about yourself? It's that one, right? Sure, right? And when we feel good about ourselves, and I'm not talking about conceit here. I'm not talking about conceit. I'm talking about when you are feeling the success that one feels when the things that you put your hand to prospers and you feel blessed or accomplished in what you're doing and what is going on in your life. Okay, that's what I'm talking about. When we feel good about ourselves, that gives us a feeling of joy, doesn't it? Sure it does. All right? And when you achieve greater things, you experience more joy. All right? Not that we equate joy with success, but as failure tends to make us feel sad, success is one of those things that tends to make us feel joyful. And Yeshua said much about this in the parable of the talents. We're going to look at that in just a minute, but in Matthew 25:29 it says, "For to everyone who possesses, more shall be given, and he shall have overflowingly. But from him who does not possess, even what he possesses will be taken away." I can see joy and success there, and not so much joy in the other. All right. Now, I believe that the reign of the heavens is going to be a land of opportunity, not for the greedy of gain, but a place where we will be encouraged to be all that we can be. All right? And grow to our full potential. And that, among other things, is going to bring us great joy in the reign to come. All right? And I believe that He told us this parable for a reason, which brings us to the other part of the message, which tied it all together. Before Yahweh is going to bless us with riches and freedom and the full potential of the reign of the heavens, He's going to give us opportunities to demonstrate so so as to see how well we will obey Him and how well we will perform before He's going to start putting those other things on us with the limited potential that we have now. In other words, will we be faithful with a little? All right? And before concluding, you were asked, what are you doing with the power that He has given you? Remember? What are you doing with the power? He has given you a little. Are you being faithful with a little? And are you carefully guarding it? Are you trying to make it grow? Or are you prepared to say, here you go. That's what you gave me. You got what's yours. Because He's not going to give us more if we're not willing to use what He has given us. Amen? He's just not. And that perhaps the reason that we have been given obstacles in our lives is so that we can show Yahweh our willingness to overcome. Right? And if we want to exchange what could have been for what could be, perhaps we should get busy working on what is and making ourselves be the best we can in our present situation. What do you think? Today I want to talk about our abilities and strengths, but not let us forget our liabilities. And I want to also talk about working with Yahweh so as to overcome our liabilities and to build upon the abilities and strengths that He has given us, and He's given them to us all. He's given them to us all. The problem is that we have to use those strengths and abilities to overcome our shortcomings. So, let's look at James chapter 4. Jacob chapter 4. I got a dog story I'm going to tell you in a little while. Everybody likes a dog story. Jacob chapter 4, page 1176 in the 98 IS. So we're going to start reading in verse 1. Where do fightings and strivings come from among you? Do they not come from your pleasures that battle in your members? You desire and you do not have. You murder and are jealous and are unable to obtain. You strive and fight and you do not possess because you do not ask. You ask and you do not receive because you ask evilly in order to spend it on your pleasures. Adulterers and adulteresses, do you not know that friendship with the world is enmity with Elohim? Whoever therefore intends to be a friend of the world makes himself an enemy of Elohim. Or do you think that the Scripture speaks to no purpose? Does the Spirit which dwells in us intensely crave unto envy? But He gives us greater favor. Because of this, He says, Elohim resists the proud but gives favor to the humble. So then, subject yourselves to Elohim, resist the devil, and he shall flee from you. That's an important verse. Draw near to Elohim, and He shall draw near to you. Cleanse hands, sinners, and cleanse the hearts, you double-minded. Lament and mourn and weep. Let your laughter be turned to mourning and your joy to dejection. Humble yourselves in the sight of the Master, and He shall lift you up. Brothers, do not speak against one another. He that speaks against a brother and judges his brother speaks against Torah and judges Torah. And if you judge Torah, you're not a doer of Torah, but a judge. There's one lawgiver, and judge, who is able to save and to destroy. Who are you to judge another? Come now, you who say, today or tomorrow, let us go to such and such a city, spend a year there and trade and make a profit, when you do not know of tomorrow. For what is your life? For it is a vapor that appears for a little. A little. Didn't Yahshua say you've been faithful with a little? And then disappears. Verse 15. Instead of your saying, if the Master desires, we shall live and do this or that. But now you boast in your proud speeches. All such boasting is wicked. To him then who knows to do good and does not do it, to him it is sin. Verse 2. You desire and you do not have. You murder and are jealous and unable to obtain. You strive and fight and you do not possess, because you do not ask. You ask and do not receive, because you ask evilly in order to spend it on your pleasures. And in verse 17 again, to him who knows to do good and does not do it, to him it is sin. Those are important. And also verse 4:4, second, the last part there, whoever therefore intends to be a friend of the world makes himself an enemy of Elohim. Do you not know that friendship with the world is enmity with Elohim? Okay, so Yaakov is telling us that asking is not enough. All right? It has to be done for the right reason, and it has to be done in humility. All right? How many of you have ever asked and not received? That was an easy one right there, wasn't it? Could it be that we're not asking for the right reason and in the right way? Do we ask just to spend it on ourselves? The reason that I ask this is because I'm afraid that much of the time we sit on our hands. And why do we sit on our hands? Well, we sit on our hands to keep from wringing them. All right? We sit on our hands to keep from wringing them. And then all we can do, is to run our mouths. Because, see, when you're sitting on your hands, you can neither work with your hands nor your feet. Think about that. All right? And the mouth is all that's left. Now, I have a feeling that most of us, if asked, would likely admit that we are sorely lacking in the amount of time that we devote to prayer and to study. See, it's not enough to talk a big game. All right? It's not. Yahweh expects us to work and be faithful with what He has given us. All right, let's look at that parable again. Matthew 25. We're going to start reading verse 14. Matthew 25. Page 948. Matthew 25:14. For it's like a man going from home who called his own servants and delivered his possessions to them. And to one he gave 5 talents, and to another 2, and to another 1. To each according to his own what? Ability, and he went from home. And he who had received the 5 talents went and worked with them and made another 5 talents. In the same way, he with the 2 also, he gained 2 more. But he who had received the 1 went away and dug in the ground and hid the silver of his master. And after a long time, the master of those servants came to settle accounts with them. And he who had received 5 talents came and brought 5 other talents, saying, Master, you delivered to me 5 talents. See, I have gained 5 more besides them. And his master said to him, Well done, good and trustworthy servant. You were trustworthy over a little. I shall set you over much. Enter into, what's that? Joy. Enter into the joy of your master. He must have had some success. All right? Then he who had received 2 talents came and said, Master, you delivered to me 2 talents. See, I have gained 2 more talents besides them. His master said to them, Well done, good and trustworthy servant. You were trustworthy over a little. I shall set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. And the one who had received the 1 talent also came and said, Master, I knew you to be a hard man, reaping where you have not sown and gathering where you have not scattered seed. And being afraid, I went and hid your talent in the ground. See, you have what is yours. And his master answering said to him, You wicked and lazy servant, you knew that I reap where I have not sown and gather where I have not scattered seed. Then you should have put my silver with the bankers, and at my coming I would have received back my own with interest. Therefore, take away the talent from him and give it to him who possesses 10 talents. For to everyone who possesses, more shall be given, and he shall have overflowingly. But from him who does not possess, even what he possesses shall be taken away. And throw the worthless servant out into outer darkness. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. And when the son of Adam comes in his esteem, and all the set-apart messengers with him, then he shall sit on the throne of his esteem, and all the nations shall be gathered before him, and he shall separate them one from another, as a shepherd separates his sheep from his goats, and he shall set the sheep on his right, but the goats on his left. And then the sovereign shall say to those on his right hand, Come, you blessed of my Father, inherit the reign prepared for you from the foundation of the world. So, we all would like to have overflowingly, amen? Probably not a good idea just to hand him back. Say, here's what, it's yours, master. You know? All right. Do you see that we've got to demonstrate this to Yahweh by working with that which He has given us? Right? To each according to his what? His ability. All right? Or is it just sufficient to keep talking and yakking and blathering and honoring Him with our lips, but our hearts are too far from Him to change that which needs changing? You know, this is one thing that I did learn in the church, which I believe to be true. Just go into a worship service on Sabbath, singing a few songs and reading the Scriptures, because that's the portion of the program when the minister reads the Scriptures. All right? Praying when the minister says, let's pray. Or watching sermons on the outreach ministry program, whether that's YouTube or however you're getting it, is not going to get you much more than a few hours of entertainment and fellowship. That's what it's good for. All right? It will not deliver you from evil. It will not deliver us on the day of judgment. You, me, we have got to live a life that is devoted to Yahweh. All right? Otherwise, it's just lip service. And one of the downsides to that is He knows the secrets of your heart. Yeah. Psalm 44. Going to be on page 670. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does. Page 670, verse 20. If we have forgotten the name of our Elohim, or stretched out our hands to a foreign mighty one, would Elohim not search this out? For He knows the secrets of the heart. Okay, so do we tell people about the Torah, and then for our own pleasures, maybe we break Shabbat? We're doing what we are told do not do. You know, do we maybe break Shabbat? Be angry with our brother without cause. Fornicate. Disrespect our parents. Teach our grandchildren to disrespect their parents. Do we lie? Be slothful. Practice gluttony, obesity, stealing. Are we drunkards, gossips, or whatever for our own pleasure? Most likely. Certainly not all the above, but most likely. So what are we to do? We have to stop. We have to stop. It's that simple. It's not that easy. It's not that easy. Romans chapter 7. Romans chapter 7. We're going to start reading verse 14. We're going to be on page 1092. Romans 7, verse 14. For we know that the Torah is spiritual, but I am fleshly, sold under sin. For what I work, I know not. For what I wish, that I do not practice. But what I hate, that I do. But if I do what I do not wish, I agree that the Torah, that it is good. And now it is no longer I that work it, but the sin dwelling in me. For I know that in me, that is my flesh, dwells no good. For the wish is present with me, but to work the good I do not find. For the good that I wish to do, I do not do. But the evil I do not wish to do, that I practice. This I practice. And if I do that which I do not wish, it is no longer I who work, but the sin dwelling in me. I find therefore this law, that when I wish to do the good, that the evil is present with me. For I delight in the Torah of Elohim according to the inward man, but I see another law in my members, battling against the Torah of my mind, and bringing me into captivity to the law of sin which is in my members. I ask this question real quick. Who's winning the battle? Which man's winning the battle? That's a good question. Wretched man that I am, who shall deliver me from this body of death? Thanks to Elohim through Yeshua Messiah our Master. So then, with the mind I truly serve the Torah of Elohim, but with the flesh the law of sin. Right? So we see that Paul wrestled with this too. Right? You know, we have a tendency to put the people in the Scripture up on a pedestal. And they have answered a calling that a lot of people wouldn't answer, and they are worthy of our respect. But they still struggle with a lot of the same things that we do, because they were men and women. And I'm thankful of that, because without that, all of this seems unattainable a lot of the time. But when I see these men of Elohim and that they were struggling with the same things that we are, well, there's some consolation in that. Amen? There's some consolation in that. But remember, we blamed a lot on the wrongs of our lives, on the wrongs of our lives. All right? When we were considering the condition of our condition. Do you remember me asking that question? All right. We blamed a lot of things on the wrongs of our lives. So let's look at someone else with a similar problem who Yahweh used in spite of it. Turn with me to Genesis chapter 37. Bereshit 37. We're going to be on page 40 in the 98 ISR. We're going to look at Joseph just a little bit here, Yosef. Genesis 37, Bereshit 37, verse 3. And Yisrael loved Yosef more than all his children because he was the son of his old age, and he made him a long robe. Okay. So we have favoritism, dysfunction, which results in an attitude of pride in Yosef. Okay? Verse 4. But when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, and do you know what? When you make one of yours your favorite more than the others, well, the other brothers and sisters, they know it. They know it. But when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all of his brothers, they hated him and were not able to speak peaceably to him. Sibling rivalry caused by favoritism and dysfunction. Okay? And Yosef dreamed a dream. And he told it to his brothers, so they hated him even more. And he said to them, please listen to this dream which I have dreamed. See, we were binding sheaves in the midst of the field, and see, my sheaf rose up and also stood up, and see, your sheaves stood all around and bowed down to my sheaf. What do you fellas think about that one? All right? And his brother said to him, shall you indeed rule over us? Shall you indeed rule over us? So they hated him even more for his dreams and for his words. And he dreamed still another dream and related it to his brothers and said, see, I have dreamed another dream. And see, the sun and the moon and the 11 stars bowed down to me. And he related this to his father and his brothers. See, Dad may have thought this was all fun and games till this dream came along, you know. And he says, what is this dream that you have dreamed? Shall we, your mother and I, and your brothers indeed come to bow down to the earth before you? And his brothers envied him, but his father guarded the word. Okay, now, did Yahweh use Yosef? Yes, he did. But I got to tell you, Yosef had some problems. Yosef had some problems. Did you notice that it didn't say that the other brothers hated one another? The other brothers didn't hate one another. Oh, I'm sure that they had the normal disputes and, you know, aggravations that's going to happen in a family. But the other brothers don't hate one another. But they hate Yosef. See, there's something going on that's causing Yosef to be an outcast. And I think we figured out what it is. Because Dad's showing him favoritism. He's being prideful. You know, just because you think something doesn't mean that it's got to come out of your mouth. All right? I know that's a foreign concept. I know that's a foreign concept to some folks. All right? But just because you think something doesn't mean that it has to come out from your mouth. But Yahweh did use him. Do you realize what all Yahweh had to put him through in order to correct the pride of his youth? I'm sure we don't get the whole gamut of things, but he had to do a lot with him, right? He gets thrown into a well by his family because they were going to kill him. gets thrown into a well. He gets sold as a slave. He gets sent to Mitzrayim. There, he's accused of attempted rape and could have been killed right then. But he's thrown into prison and left there. Mr. Dad's favorite. And while he was left there, though, he never forgot Yahweh. He never forgot Yahweh in spite of all his problems. You see, we all can have difficulties that we're dealing with without forsaking Yahweh. All right? But Yahweh had to break that spirit and put him where he could be used. And you know what? Sometimes Yahweh has to put us in low places too, so that he can use us. And I know that. Listen, growing up's hard to do. Growing up is hard to do, all right? And if you didn't get the opportunity when you were a child, it's going to be just as hard now. All right? It's going to be just as hard now. But we must correct our ways if we are to prosper with Yahweh. We can't just sit around and blame it on our past. All right? Have you prayed to Yahweh for inspiration? Because, sometimes we get stuck in a funk and say, I'm just not inspired. Have you prayed for inspiration? Have you asked Yahweh for inspiration? See, first you have to admit that there's a problem, all right? And that you're not getting it fixed under your own power. Can you relate to that? You got a problem and you're not getting it fixed under your own power. And then you have to believe that Yahweh would help if he were sought. All right? And then you've got to get off of your rear end and free those hands that we were talking about and those feet and do the work. All right? Lots of different ways. All right? Do you need to go to AA? Do you need to go to Al-Anon? Do you need to go to Overeaters Anonymous or NA or SA? Or maybe financial counseling? Or some other group who helps with other problems that you may be having. And before you poo-poo those programs like that and say that they're not of Yahweh, I want you to remember something. Yahweh sent Yosef to Mitzrayim to get him straightened out. Just saying. Mitzrayim wasn't of Yahweh. Yahweh used it. All right? Sometimes those who keep struggling and suffering will say to me things like, well, I just hadn't been able to get to a meeting. After years of ministry and praying for those who are having trouble and trying to help others with the struggles in their lives, I believe I finally discovered why so many times I hear the words, things are terrible. I know I need help, but I've been unable to get to a meeting. If you've been unable to get to a meeting, I think that I figured out what's causing it. And I want to share it with you because this is a life-changing revelation. Are you ready? It's something that hurting people need to hear. And it's true pretty much no matter what time of the day it is or what time they're having the meetings or anything like that. Whenever they open the meeting place up and they set the chairs up and they get the coffee made and others arrive and they start the meeting, you keep your rear end at the house and you don't go. That's the revelation. That's the revelation. Stand on them hands. And more often than not, that's why you've been unable to get to the meeting. All right? You've got to free up those hands and free up those feet so you can get off your rear end and get some work done. Oh, but you don't understand, Stan. I've got kids, and I've got a job, and I've got commitments, and I'm tired, or I'm so embarrassed. What if someone sees my car parked outside that place? Blah, 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 blah. The fact is that you simply do not do what you need to do. You've got to free up those hands and free up those feet and get off your rear end so that you can do the work that you need to do if you're going to get better and reach more of your potential. Did you know that Hasatan does not want you to get better? Whatever you're struggling with, Hasatan does not want you to get better. Are you out of shape and getting worse? Maybe you need to go and get you a workout partner. Perhaps it's something like that. Do you have trash in your mind that you can't get out? All right? Maybe it's because when something bad is on a TV set, you just sit there and watch it. What a concept. Or you think that somehow you're spiritually above it, so the effects of it doesn't affect you. When you choose to go to bad movies or listen to junk on the radio, you know, stuff goes in, garbage out. Or when unrighteousness comes across your Facebook feed. All right? Oh, yeah, I see some heads nodding. All right? Unrighteousness comes across your Facebook feed and you don't scroll on past it. But you love it. And you laugh at it. And you like it. Or you share it. And you share this unrighteousness with your friends. So that you spread the unrighteousness. Just for the record, Satan appreciates your help. Satan appreciates your help when you do things like this. I'm even amazed at some of the stuff that I see coming across on Sabbath even. It's not just not about Sabbath, but there's trash I see going across on Sabbath. And I'm thinking, this day is supposed to be set apart to Yahweh. All right? Satan appreciates that. We have to do the hard thing and grow up and correct our ways. See, that shows a level of immaturity. All right? That shows what James was talking about earlier, that friendship with the world is enmity with Elohim. All right. Now for the dog story. Pain is a tremendous motivator. No, it's not about somebody getting bit. But that will teach you to stay out of the yard. There was once this dog that lived down the street from us. And to his credit, he didn't chase cars. He did not chase cars. But he wouldn't let them pass either. He would just stand in the road in front of the car. And I'm here to tell you, if you tried to go to the left to go around him, he'd move over there. And if you tried to go to the right, he would move over there. And if you blew the horn at him, you know what he'd do? He'd just start barking at you. All right? Well, one day, he got run over. I know who ran over him too. It was not me. No, it was not me, Mom. The person that ran over him is not here, is not part of this congregation. I do know who ran over him though. It did not kill the dog. But it did break his hip. Which I'm sure bothered him for a long time. A long time. But you know what? He stopped causing problems. He stopped causing problems. It's too bad that he had to learn the hard way. Oh, because he knew he was doing it. He knew that he was standing there being a Dickens. But see, sometimes we know that we're being a Dickens. You know, we know that we're doing things that are wrong. But he had to learn the hard way. Can you relate to that? Can you relate to having to learn the hard way? Because pain is a tremendous motivator. And the more that you can do on your own without suffering the pain, the more pleasant your life will be. Amen? Amen. Sometimes you can stand there and watch that other dog get run over and say, yep, I think I need to go out there and take his place. You know? So, you have to decide for yourself. Are you going to do not do what you need to do? Or roll up your sleeves and get to work, becoming all that you can be for Yahweh. See, it's mighty hard to roll up your sleeves when you're sitting on your hands. Amen? Roll up your sleeves and get to work so that we do instead of do not do. After all, we either do or do not do to Yahweh. Amen? Amen. Yevrokeka Yahweh ba'ishmareka ya'er Yahweh panavaleka bikuneka Yasa Yahweh panavaleka bi'asem lakash shalom. Yahweh bless you and guard you. Yahweh make His face to shine upon you and show favor to you. Yahweh lift up His face upon you and give you His complete contentment.